Well, good afternoon and welcome to Truth Worth Living, where we seek to understand God's Word so we can live right in the center of God's will. You know, we've been studying the book of Hebrews, and you'll remember that the writer is systematically trying to get the believers just to keep it together. They're wavering in their conviction that Jesus is the Christ. And in part because they've gotten swept up into the mania in Jerusalem, in Israel, that angels were to be worshipped. And somehow they convinced themselves that Jesus was just another angel. And I say just another angel, not because we don't have a high view of angels. They did, and many of the Jews believed they were worthy of their worship. But rather, in making Jesus an angel, they were actually downgrading him. He wasn't an angel. He was the second person of the Trinity, fully God and fully man. And so the writer has worked very hard to make that point, but he's thorough, and there's more to be done. So after telling them in the first 4 verses of chapter 2 not to neglect that great salvation that Jesus offers, which, by the way, if you'll remember, was superior in every way to the law that the angels offered, now he advances his argument for the supremacy of Christ by explaining the way the world was ordered by God at creation, and the place of angels, the place of humans, and the place that Jesus occupies in God's created order. So let's look at Hebrews chapter 2, beginning in verse 5. It is not to angels that he has subjected the world to come, about which we are speaking. But there is a place where someone has testified, "What is mankind that you are mindful of them, a son of man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned them with glory and honor and put everything under their feet." In putting everything under them, and that's mankind, God left nothing that is not subject to them. Yet, at present, we do not see everything subject to them. But we do see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for a little while, now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. Now, first he says, we're talking about the world to come. That is, the world as it will exist when Christ returns. It's the time where darkness will be completely extinguished or exterminated by light, and everything is going to return to the idyllic conditions that were established at creation prior to the fall. Okay, in verse 5 he says, in the world to come, angels are not going to rule, but will take their place as servants. Now, what's the implication there? It's really clear. In the world as it is currently functioning, the angels are ruling. They are superior to men today because of sin, but that's not permanent. If we did an org chart for the way the world is organized today, post-fall, it would be this. It would be God, then the angels, fallen and holy, the dark angels and the holy ones, then the earth, and then mankind. So it would be God, angels, earth, mankind. But that's not the way God originally set things up to work. Originally it was God, mankind, angels, the holy ones, and the earth. In the beginning, man was given authority over the earth. Angels served mankind just as the earth did. Think about it. In the garden, prior to the fall, the earth was subject to man. We had dominion over the earth. The earth supplied all our needs without the difficult challenge that we call labor. It wasn't by the sweat of our brow. Then when Adam and Eve succumbed to Satan's temptations, the tempter actually usurped the crown, and the chain of command was changed substantially. Okay, we understand now that angels are over men. That's proven by the fact that we live in the midst of spiritual warfare. Do you remember what Ephesians 6:12 says? Listen to it as if you're hearing it for the first time. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So we are subjected to the dark angels. We put on our spiritual armor and we call out to God to help us overcome. We know all about that, right? But the hard part to fathom is that the order has been inverted to the point that the earth is now over us. Okay? Think about this. Even with all the advances in technology that we enjoy, we are still subject to the natural laws and the arbitrary whims of our ecosystem. Right? We may be able to predict the weather or not. So kind of. We might even be able to chase it and record all its activity, but we can do nothing about it. Right? Hurricanes still win. Springtime freezes still bring orange farmers to their knees. We can track tornadoes, but somehow we can't avoid them. Even with all our modern technology, we must constantly fight against the world for survival. Listen what the Puritan Uriah Oakes wrote. Man had originally an empire and dominion over these creatures here below. But sin hath inverted this order and brought confusion upon the earth. Man is dethroned and become a servant and slave to those things that were made to serve him. And he puts those things in his heart that God hath put under his feet. Now in verses 6 through 8, quoting Psalm 8, the writer describes how things should be. And then in verse 8, he wraps up saying, in putting everything under them, that is, under mankind, God left nothing that is not subject to them. Yet, at present, we do not see everything subject to them. At present, man is at the bottom of the org chart. Things are not as they should be. So the question is what, or rather who, can restore the proper order? Okay, it's not the angels. That's the point here. The angels aren't going to fix this mess. It's Jesus. Listen to verse 9. But we do see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for a little while. That's when he put the suit of skin on. We see him now crowned with glory and honor because he suffered death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. So, what's the message? Sin, the sin of man, introduced death and disorder. But the righteousness of God came in the person of Jesus Christ, subjected himself to death, to the disorder that emerged due to sin. He subjected himself to death to do something that the angels could never do. He reestablished the proper order of things, and when he returns, remember that's what we're talking about, when he returns, he's going to be crowned with glory and honor for his work. Now, our responsibility here and now is to live in submission to the one who came and died to set everything straight. If we don't neglect the great salvation he offers, then the promise is that we will rule and reign with him as sons and daughters in the age to come. Now, that is truth worth living. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've had a great day. I'm looking forward to our Bible study tomorrow night in the book of Mark, and also as we continue our series on Sunday morning in Overcoming Apathy. God bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, and give you peace. Have a great day.